Welcome to the Crack Podcast, everyone. It's incredibly common, and often, it stems from using learning strategies that just aren't very efficient.
Right.
And that's exactly why we're trying to cut through the confusion today. We're doing a deep dive into the actionable mechanics of mastery. We're leveraging insights from Scott H.Young's framework, focusing on his work, Get Better at Anything.
So, our mission today is pretty straightforward. Give you a clear, efficient roadmap. We're not just talking about what to learn. We're really digging into how you structure your approach to improvement. How do you make your time yield, maximum results?
Exactly. And Young simplifies this whole mastery thing down to three essential pillars, foundational pillars.
Pillars.
We call them the three factors for improvement, and you really need all three working together in concert.
Okay, what are they?
So first, there's C. This means learning not in isolation, but by observing, by analyzing examples from others.
C.
Second, there's Do. This involves practice, but not just any practice. It needs to be targeted, effectively difficult, and high volume.
Okay, C and Do. Makes sense.
And finally, there's Feedback. This is the continuous, honest reality check. It ensures you're actually getting better, not just, spinning your wheels.
So you do. Feedback. It's like you need the map, and then you have to walk the road, and then you need to keep checking the compass constantly.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
So to kind of illustrate the power of this framework right away, let's maybe start with a really remarkable modern example. It's about accelerated networked learning. Let's unpack this.
Right. I want to talk about what we could call the Tetris enigma. Now, Tetris, it's an old game, right? Been played for decades.
Decades, yeah.
Yet modern players, like Joseph Salih, they're hitting skill levels that people previously thought were, physically impossible. They've blown past the limits of earlier generations who mostly played in isolation.
Huh. So it's not that Salih is just naturally smarter or faster than players from the 90s?
Probably not, no. The generational leap in skill is just staggering. So the question is, why did those earlier highly dedicated players plateau where today's players keep breaking records?
Yeah, why?
Well, the sources are really clear on this. The secret, it seems, to modern rapid skill acquisition is the ease of learning from others' innovations.
Ah, okay. So the older players were kind of reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. They had to figure out every optimization, every little movement pattern, every strategy, basically on their own. Just pure trial and error. A really slow, probably painful process.
I can imagine.
But then, the internet happens. Streaming platforms arrive. And that learning environment, it changed radically.
Right. Now you've got players live streaming elite play on Twitch or archiving strategies on YouTube. So a beginner today, in 2024, they don't start from zero.
Not at all. They start by analyzing specific optimized techniques from world champions. Things like rolling or hyper-tapping in Tetris. This whole network sharing thing, it just short-circuits potentially thousands of hours of individual discovery.
Yeah.
It completely transformed what was once a very isolated task into this social, shared learning space. Being able to watch elite strategies in real time, slow them down, have them explained. It's the ultimate example of that C pillar in action.
So you don't have to invent the solutions yourself.
You just have to efficiently find them and understand them, of course.
And that leads us, I think, directly into our first core maxim. Problem solving is search. This isn't just a philosophical point, is it? It actually defines how our brains tackle new challenges.
Right. Think about problem solving like navigating a huge maze. The sources call it a problem space. Now, if you try to solve, say, a complex coding problem or a deep math equation entirely by yourself,
You're just wandering.
You're essentially wandering through that maze, bumping into walls, backtracking, wasting enormous amounts of cognitive energy just trying to find a path.
Okay, so the human advantage isn't just raw brain power inside our heads.
Not necessarily, no. It's more about knowing how to quickly search for, locate, and then apply the proven path, the path someone else has already mapped out. Like the sources say, our ability to learn from each other, it vastly exceeds our ability to solve really complex problems totally alone.
We save generations of effort by building on what others learned.
Precisely. So for you, the learner, this means your very first step in acquiring a skill has to be disciplined observation. You need to actively seek out reliable, high-quality examples that clearly show the path experts took.
Not just one path either.
Ideally, no. You should observe varying practices, different approaches. That helps you understand the boundaries of the problem space, not just, one single way that worked for someone.
Okay, so if the goal is search, we need maps, good maps. Which brings us to maybe a really counterintuitive idea, especially today when everyone's obsessed with being unique. Creativity begins with copying.
Yeah, this one definitely rubs some people the wrong way. We tend to equate genius with pure, like, bolt from the blue originality. But history and cognitive science, they both show that real mastery often starts with imitation.
But wait, that sounds like heresy almost. If I want to develop a unique writing style or a totally new business strategy, you're saying I should just copy someone else first. Where's the line? When does copying stop being, imitation and start being genuine expression? It feels blurry.
It is blurry, but the copying part is essential precisely because it gives you the structure you need initially. Think about the Renaissance artists, their training.
The apprenticeships.
Right. Apprentices didn't start painting their own original masterpieces. They spent years, literally years, meticulously copying the works of masters. Leonardo da Vinci himself, he argued for learning through imitation before you even attempt original composition.
Why? What were they getting from just copying?
They were replicating everything, the strokes, the textures, the way light was used, not just to make a duplicate picture, but to internalize the master's invisible cognitive processes.
Yeah.
How did they think about composing that scene?
So imitation is actually a kind of forced deep analysis.
Exactly. And this isn't just art history. It's backed by cognitive research, notably John Sweller's work on cognitive load theory.
Okay.
Sweller and others found that beginners learn much more effectively from studying worked examples, problems where all the solution steps are laid out clearly, than from trying to solve problems independently right away.
Why is that?
Because when you force a novice to solve it alone, they waste all their mental energy just trying to figure out the method instead of focusing on understanding the underlying principles.
That's the key insight then. Copying lets the novice internalize those invisible thought processes of the experts. We need examples that show all the steps clearly.
Yes, absolutely crucial, because expert knowledge becomes automatic or tacit. When experts perform a skill, they often can't even articulate the tiny decisions they're making anymore. It just happens.
Right.
Copying forces the beginner to slow down, analyze every single step, absorb those processes. It makes the task explicit and that structure. It's the absolute necessary groundwork for developing truly informed originality later on.
So, okay, the transition from see to do, it really hinges on the quality of our observation, the examples we choose. We have to make the invisible visible, otherwise our practice is built on shaky ground.
Perfectly put. If you skip or skimp on this observation step, you'll spend all your practice time just trying to find the method, solving navigational problems, instead of refining your execution, getting better at the method. So now, assuming we have that map in hand, we can move into actually doing it. Active practice.
All right, moving into the do pillar, the actual practice. And we start here with something I think is really powerfully motivational. Success is the best teacher. We often glorify failure, fail fast, and all that. But the sources remind us that early successes, even tiny ones, they significantly boost motivation. They create this virtuous cycle.
The psychology here is so important. When you achieve even a small success, your brain releases dopamine. That reinforces the neural pathways tied to that successful action. It builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to succeed.
Right.
If you only encounter frustration and failure right at the start, the virtuous cycle never gets going and motivation just tanks.
It makes me think of Helen Keller, that famous breakthrough moment connecting the sign for water with actual water. It was a relatively small success in the grand scheme, but it basically bootstrapped her entire intellectual life, didn't it?
It absolutely did. That single success unlocked the world for her. And it really highlights how crucial solid foundational skills are. If those basic building blocks are shaky or missing, trying to learn complex skills on top becomes agonizingly slow and frustrating.
Yeah.
This is related to what Benjamin Bloom found in his famous 2 Sigma problem research. Bloom observed that students who got personalized one-on-one tutoring often performed 2 standard deviations better than students in traditional classrooms.
Whoa, 2 standard deviations. That's massive. It basically proves that personalized learning, which helps ensure students succeed early and master basics before moving on, is transformative. We need teaching strategies that guarantee that foundational success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But once that foundation is solid, you can't stay comfortable.
Right.
You have to deliberately move out of the comfort zone.
Which brings us to the next maxim, finding the difficulty sweet spot.
Okay.
Improvement is, by definition, impossible if you just keep doing what you already know how to do perfectly. You have to stretch.
You see this with creative people who really push themselves, like the science fiction author Octavia Butler. She started from a tough place but consciously embraced really complex literary challenges. She put herself in rigorous workshops, tackled problems that probably felt way beyond her at first.
Right. And that embrace of challenge leads directly to this idea of desirable difficulties. Now, this is really counterintuitive for a lot of learners because they often prioritize feeling like they're learning quickly in the short term.
Okay, what are desirable difficulties?
They are learning strategies that intentionally make the learning process feel a bit harder, maybe slower or clumsier right now. But, and this is the key, they lead to dramatically better long-term retention and actual skill acquisition. So, if I'm studying for a test by just reading my notes over and over, which feels easy, right? It makes me feel familiar with the material quickly. I'm actually hurting my long-term memory.
Pretty much, yeah. That's passive review. It creates an illusion of mastery. That's why things like retrieval practice, forcing yourself to recall information without looking at your notes, or space practice, spreading your study sessions out over time, are considered desirable difficulties.
They feel harder.
They force your brain to work harder to retrieve or reconstruct the information. And that effort strengthens the encoding process. And for skill mastery specifically, we really need mixed or variable practice.
Okay, let's dig into those strategies. This sounds like where the listener gets their immediate roadmap for the do part. The sources outline 4 key strategies for this variable practice, right?
That's right. 4 key ones. First, shuffle your studying. So instead of drilling topic A over and over for an hour, then topic B for an hour. Randomize it. Mix different topics or skills within a single practice session.
Why does that help?
It forces your brain to constantly figure out which pattern or technique applies to this specific problem, rather than just mindlessly repeating one thing. It builds adaptability.
Okay, that makes sense. If I'm learning tennis, I shouldn't just hit forehands for an hour straight. I should mix in forehands, backhands, volleys, serves, randomly, kind of like a real match.
Precisely. Second strategy, play with more performers or engage with diverse collaborators. Exposing yourself to different styles, different viewpoints, different ways of doing things, it enriches your understanding massively.
Like learning a language, maybe?
Yeah.
Speaking with people from different regions who use different slang or accents?
Exactly. It forces you to adapt. Third strategy, learn the theories. Don't just learn the how, learn the why. Gaining a deeper understanding of the underlying principles allows for much greater improvisation and application in new situations.
So knowing why a certain chord progression sounds sad is as important as just knowing how to play the chords.
Right. Theory gives your brain a framework for generalization, for applying the skill flexibly. And the fourth strategy, this one's like a crucial guardrail. Get it pramic, right? Then vary your practice.
Ah, okay. So don't mix it up too soon.
Exactly. You can't introduce all this variability right at the beginning when you're still struggling with the absolute basics. You need to master the fundamentals first, achieve that initial success we talked about, get the core movement or concept right. Then start shuffling and mixing and adding complexity. Otherwise, variation just becomes confusing chaos.
Get it right, then vary. Okay, now let's talk volume. We've talked about quality and difficulty, but there's another maxim here. Quality comes from quantity. That reminds me of Edison, right? Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
And you look at the sheer output of really prolific creators, it's often staggering. Pablo Picasso, for instance, thousands and thousands of paintings, sculptures, ceramics. The evidence strongly suggests that breakthroughs, those moments of true creative innovation, they're often a function of just high volume and relentless iteration.
But hang on, isn't there a tension here? If we're supposed to be practicing at the edge of our competence in that difficulty sweet spot, how do we make sure we're not just churning out 99% mediocre stuff that reinforces bad habits, doesn't just brute volume contradict deliberate practice?
That's a really important point, a critical tension. The answer, I think, lies in the connection to feedback and iteration. High volume isn't just about doing more stuff. It's about creating more opportunities for feedback and learning.
Ooh, okay.
Think about it. If you spend a whole year trying to create one single perfect piece, you get one feedback cycle when it's done. If you create 10 rougher pieces or prototypes in that same time, you get 10 feedback cycles, 10 chances to learn and adjust.
So more attempts increase the odds of stumbling onto something genuinely new or successful, especially since creativity can be kind of random.
Exactly. Creativity is often surprisingly random and chance-driven. More attempts simply increase your probability of hitting on something that works. So the mantra isn't just practice deliberately, it's also create more and embrace iteration. You can't just wait for perfect inspiration to strike.
Okay. Quantity enables the refinement process that ultimately leads to quality. But this dedication to high volume, it's kind of meaningless without that final pillar, right? The reality check.
Exactly. Moving to the third pillar, feedback. This is where we make sure all that seeing and doing actually translates into real-world skill. And our first maxim here really challenges conventional wisdom. Experience doesn't reliably ensure expertise.
Yeah, that's a big one. Culturally, we automatically tend to defer to someone with, say, 20 years of experience in a field. But the sources are pretty strong on this. Long-term experience alone, without high-quality feedback on your mistakes, can easily load to complacency. Or worse, what they call inert knowledge.
Inert knowledge, meaning
Knowledge that just sits there. You technically know it, but you don't apply it effectively when it really matters, under pressure. It hasn't been tested and refined by feedback.
Okay. The poker case study of Annette Oberstad is a fantastic illustration here. She became the youngest ever World Series of poker bracelet winner at just 19. And she acquired her elite skills incredibly quickly, mostly through playing poker online.
Online poker, right? How did that differ from learning in a live game?
Think about the feedback loop. In a traditional face-to-face poker game, feedback is slow. It's often subtle, maybe based on fuzzy reads or incomplete information. It's very subjective.
Okay, but online?
Online platforms provided essentially perfect information instantly. Digital tracking of every single hand played, statistics on opponents, exact pot odds calculations. It was instant, structured, objective, and incredibly extensive feedback. Oberstad wasn't just playing hands. She was generating enormous amounts of data about her own decisions, her mistakes, her successes. This allowed her to rapidly calibrate her strategy based on concrete results. True intuitive expertise, the sources argue, comes from prolonged experience combined with good, clear feedback on mistakes.
That instant objective structure is what turned her playing time, her experience, into genuine expertise, not just longevity. Okay, but getting that kind of structured feedback from the high-level experts we want to learn from can be really tough, almost impossible sometimes, because of something called the curse of knowledge.
Yes, this is a major hurdle in skill transfer. When an expert's skill becomes fully automatic, totally tacit, they genuinely struggle to explain the why and how behind their decisions.
Why? They just don't know anymore.
It's more like they've forgotten what it feels like not to know. They don't consciously think through the steps anymore because it's become so ingrained, so automatic. The crucial details of their skill have become invisible, even to themselves.
So if the expert can't even explain their own process clearly, how on earth does a learner extract that essential, invisible knowledge?
Well, we have to rely on more rigorous techniques, things like cognitive task analysis or CTA. This is basically a systematic process designed specifically to extract and document the mental steps required to perform a complex task.
It's not just asking, how do you do that then?
Oh no, it's much more involved. It uses specific methods, like asking experts to share detailed stories about times they succeeded or, crucially, failed. Or, even more effectively, having them solve problems while thinking aloud, verbalizing every thought, every hypothesis, every micro-decision as it occurs.
That sounds incredibly tedious for the expert, but totally invaluable for the learner, I bet.
Huh.
They're forced to make those unconscious, automated thoughts conscious again, making the tacit explicit.
Exactly. It is tedious, but it's often essential for creating those high-quality worked examples we talked about earlier, the ones beginners need. And this whole need for visible, explicit knowledge connects right into our next maxim. Practice must meet reality. Meaning, if your training environment is too clean, too artificial, too theoretical, your skills might completely fall apart when you face the messy reality of the real world, especially under pressure.
The sources use the Tenerife airport disaster as a really stark example here, don't they? One of the most severe illustrations of training not meeting reality.
Yes, a truly catastrophic event. 2 fully loaded 747s colliding on the runway, hundreds of lives lost. And the investigation revealed it wasn't primarily a mechanical failure. It was rooted in the human element, in failures of communication and decision-making under stress.
And the training was implicated.
Deeply. The pilot's training at the time was heavily weighted towards theoretical knowledge, memorizing procedures. But it apparently lacked sufficient realistic, hands-on practice, especially for handling high-stress communication breakdowns and complex decision-making in ambiguous situations.
So when things went wrong, when the systems failed and weird social dynamics took over confusion about commands, status differences interfering with communication, their theoretical knowledge just wasn't actionable. It didn't translate.
Right. That disaster spurred huge reforms in pilot training. People like Major Robert Smithberry championed a shift towards emphasizing realistic, practical skills practiced in context, rather than just theoretical knowledge. It's the ancestor of why modern pilots spend so much time in advanced flight simulators.
Because simulators are designed as situated learning environments. You practice the skills under realistic pressure in the kind of context where you'll actually use them.
Precisely. The core insight for any learner is that immersive, real-world, or at least highly realistic simulated experiences are vital. They ensure your skills become actionable outside academic contexts. You have to practice as much as possible in the environment where the skill will eventually be performed. Otherwise, the skill might just become inert when you need it most.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now. We've talked about see, do, and feedback, the outer game. Now let's look at the inner game, the mental side of mastery, which, let's be honest, often throws up the biggest roadblocks for people.
Absolutely. And the first thing we need to do here is maybe demolish a really popular, pervasive myth. The mind is not a muscle.
Ah, the brain training idea. The belief that doing certain mental exercises, like maybe using brain training apps or solving complex puzzles, will improve your general cognitive ability across the board. Like lifting weights makes your whole body stronger.
Exactly that belief. And it's appealing, isn't it? The popularity of platforms like Lumosity certainly suggested people wanted to believe that mental workouts gave this kind of generalized benefit.
Yeah, I think so. But the research.
The research, going back to figures like Edward Thorndike, who studied the specificity of transfer and confirmed by modern neuroscience, consistently shows, well, it just isn't true, not in that simple, direct way.
So getting really good at chess doesn't automatically make me better at learning French vocabulary.
Pretty much, no. Thorndike's work and subsequent studies confirm that improvements in one specific mental skill, like becoming incredibly sharp at chess strategy, don't really transfer significantly to unrelated cognitive domains, like language learning or calculus. Cognitive skills are highly specific to the tasks you actually practice.
So if you want to get better at task X,
You have to specifically practice task X. You don't get some kind of general cognitive strength for free by doing unrelated brain teasers.
okay, understanding that specificity of skill is important. It kind of prepares you for what can be a pretty brutal reality of making progress, which is captured in our next maxim. Improvement is not a straight line.
Oh, this is a big one psychologically.
Yeah.
We all expect linearity, don't we? Put in X hours, get Y results. But real progress, especially in complex skills, it often involves plateaus that last way longer than we want, frustrating setbacks, even painful periods where you feel like you're going backwards, regressions.
Regressions, like getting worse.
Sometimes, yeah. This is where the concept of unlearning becomes really important.
The classic example here is Tiger Woods, right? He famously chose to completely overhaul his golf swing, not just once, but multiple times during his peak career. And he knew, everyone knew, it would mean a significant temporary dip in his performance. Why would arguably the best golfer ever deliberately choose to get worse before getting better?
Because he understood he needed to break an old, ingrained habit to install a new, potentially better one. We can think about this using the Fitz and Posner model of skill acquisition. It describes 3 phases.
Okay.
First is the cognitive phase. This is when you're first learning. You have to think consciously about every single step. It feels slow, clumsy, awkward.
Like learning to drive stick shift.
Exactly. Then comes the associative phase. You start to refine the steps, link them together more smoothly, make fewer errors. It requires less conscious thought. And finally, you reach the autonomous phase. The skill becomes automatic, fluid, almost unconscious. You just do it.
So Tiger's old swing, the one he wanted to change, was deep in that autonomous phase.
Precisely. It was an ingrained, efficient, but maybe suboptimal habit. To install a new, potentially superior swing, he had to consciously break that automation. That meant deliberately forcing himself back into the clumsy, conscious, error-prone cognitive phase for the new swing, temporarily.
Ah, so that performance dip wasn't failure, it was necessary unlearning. It's the friction required to overwrite an old, comfortable, autonomous habit with a new, hopefully better structure.
Exactly. And just expecting that dip, understanding it's part of the process, can help you persist through that temporary regression instead of giving up.
Okay. And finally, let's tackle maybe the biggest internal obstacle of all, the one that stops people even starting the practice. Fear. The core psychological insight here is that fears fade with exposure.
Yes. Anxiety is just a massive drain on cognitive resources. When people are fearful, they tend to catastrophize, right? They overestimate how bad a situation will actually
Yeah.
be. And that leads directly to avoidance behaviors.
You just don't do the thing you're afraid of.
Right. You avoid the public speaking gig, or challenging your boss, or submitting your creative work for critique. But every time you avoid it, you miss the crucial opportunity to disconfirm your anxious expectation. You never learn that maybe it wouldn't have been so bad after all.
So the avoidance actually reinforces the fear. It creates this nasty, self-perpetuating trap.
It does. The solution, drawn from clinical psychology, is rooted in exposure therapy. It relies on basic learning mechanisms: extinction and habituation. You gradually, systematically confront the feared situations. By experiencing safety where you expected harm, the fear response itself diminishes over time. It extinguishes.
Okay, so how does a learner apply this practically? The sources suggest something specific, right?
Yeah, a very practical strategy anyone can use. Construct a fear hierarchy.
Okay, break that down. How does someone listening right now apply this immediately?
You literally make a list. Write down every single scenario related to the skill you're learning that causes you anxiety. Order them from the least frightening at the bottom to the absolute most frightening at the top.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you have a fear of public speaking. The lowest level on your hierarchy, step 1, might be something simple, like practicing my speech out loud alone in front of a mirror. Maybe step 2 is recording myself giving the speech and watching it back. Step 3 could be presenting the speech to one trusted friend or family member. You keep adding steps, gradually increasing the difficulty until the top level is maybe presenting to a full auditorium.
And the key is you start at the bottom.
You start with the easiest one, the one that causes the least anxiety. You confront that fear in a controlled way, maybe repeatedly, until it no longer causes significant distress. Only then do you move up to the next step on the hierarchy.
So it's controlled, gradual exposure. You're building resilience step by step because you're demonstrating to your own brain over and over that the catastrophe you expected just doesn't happen.
Exactly. You're recalibrating your fear response based on actual experience, not just anxious prediction. And the final insight here, I think, is really profound, worth sitting with. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather action in spite of fear. You don't wait for the fear to magically vanish before you start practicing your skill, before you take that step on your hierarchy. You act anyway, maybe feeling the fear, but doing it regardless, because you understand that the action itself is the only thing that actually causes the fear to diminish over time. #tag out your one shake.
Wow. Okay, this whole deep dive, it really provides a complete toolkit, doesn't it? From observation strategies to practice methods to these crucial mindset adjustments. It feels like a roadmap for anyone serious about getting better, faster. Let's try to synthesize the core, actionable takeaways for everyone listening. What should they apply today?
Okay, 4 key things stand out for me. 1, first, you absolutely have to prioritize observation. See, don't just jump in blind. Actively seek out those high-quality worked examples that make the invisible cognitive steps of experts visible.
See the path first, got it.
Yeah. Second, when you do practice, you have to embrace desirable difficulties. Don't shy away from struggle. Shuffle your studying. Vary the context. Push yourself. Except that temporary difficulty often leads to much better long-term strength.
Make practice effectively hard. Okay?
Third, remember that quantity often leads to quality. Don't be afraid to produce volume, to iterate. More attempts mean more learning cycles, more chances for feedback, and a higher probability of breakthrough success.
Create more, iterate more.
Right. And fourth, you need that reality check. Feedback. Get real-world objective assessment whenever possible. Make sure your experience isn't just leading to complacent inert knowledge, but to actual usable skill.
See, do, feedback. With those strategies applied, these principles really show that mastery isn't some mystical gift. It's a structured process. It's accessible. And crucially, it's often a social endeavor, isn't it? Not just isolated genius, but networked learners building on each other.
That's a great way to put it.
But we always like to leave you with a final, maybe provocative thought, something that challenges the very nature of improvement itself.
Yeah, if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, maybe the single most challenging part of getting better isn't learning new things. Often the hardest part is the willingness to unlearn, to let go of deeply ingrained, comfortable habits or old ways of thinking, even if they feel safe. So the question for you, the listener, is, what old habits, what ways of doing things that currently feel automatic and maybe even good enough are you willing to consciously regress on, temporarily? What are you willing to become clumsy at again, knowing that temporary sacrifice might be essential for reaching your next level of mastery?
That willingness to regress, to be a beginner again, even when you're already good, maybe that's the ultimate test of courage in the pursuit of getting better. Wow, lots to think about. Take these maxims, apply them, and start walking that intentional path toward improvement. We really hope this deep dive gave you some valuable perspective.
And hey, if you found these insights useful, if this resonated with you, please do us a small favor. Hit that like button and definitely subscribe to the channel right now. We really enjoy digging into these dense topics and trying to make them clear and actionable for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for the next deep dive.